"Tonight might be your daughter's last night," the ICU doctor warned my mother over the phone. But instead of rushing to my bedside while I lay unconscious after a horrific crash, my mother coldly replied, "We're busy. Her sister needs us more right now," and hung up. For years, I was the invisible daughter, the one expected to pay for my sister Chloe's lavish lifestyle while receiving zero love in return. But they had no idea that while I was fighting for my life, I was also making a decision that would change everything. A week later, my parents finally strolled into my hospital room, expecting me to hand over my life savings to pay off Chloe's debts. But the bed was empty. In the center of the mattress lay a single white envelope. The moment my mother opened it and read the note inside, the color completely drained from her face. "My name is Clara. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been defined by a quiet, exhausting reality. I was the invisible daughter. In my family, love wasn't something freely given. It was a luxury reserved exclusively for my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was the golden child, spoiled, entitled, and incapable of facing the consequences of her own actions. My mother treated her like delicate glass, while I was treated like steel, expected to bear every burden without ever complaining. By my late 20s, I had built a successful career through sheer grit, working 60-hour weeks to secure my own financial independence. But to my mother, my hard work wasn't a source of pride. It was simply a resource to be tapped. Whenever Chloe racked up thousands of dollars in credit card debt, bought designer clothes she couldn't afford, or failed at another short-lived hobby, my mother's answer was always the same. "Clara, you're her older sister. You have to help her." For years, I handed over money just to keep the peace, mistaking their financial demands for a bizarre form of family connection. But the breaking point came on a cold Tuesday night. My mother called, not to ask how I was doing, but to demand that I sign over the equity in my apartment so Chloe could pay off a high-interest loan she'd taken out for a luxury vacation. When I finally said no, my mother's voice hardened into ice. "You are selfish, Clara. Chloe is struggling and you're hoarding your money. Family helps family." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, realizing for the first time that my worth to them was measured entirely in dollars. But I had no idea just how deep that coldness ran, or how far my mother would go to prove that my life meant nothing to her. 3 days after that devastating phone call, the weather turned violent. Rain poured in blinding sheets across the highway as I drove home late from the office. Exhausted and distracted by the toxic weight of my family, I never saw the semi-truck sliding across the slick asphalt. The impact was catastrophic. Metal crumpled, glass shattered, and then everything went completely black. I woke up hours later in the intensive care unit, surrounded by the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the smell of antiseptic. Tubing was strapped to my face, and every breath felt like shattered glass piercing my lungs. Standing at the foot of my bed was a nurse, her face etched with deep sympathy as she held the hospital phone to her ear. "Mrs. Vance." The nurse spoke into the receiver, her voice urgent. "I'm calling from Sacred Heart ICU. Your daughter Clara was brought in after a severe auto accident. She has severe internal bleeding and head trauma. The doctor says tonight might be her last night. You need to come to the hospital immediately." I drifted in and out of consciousness, but the room was so quiet that I heard my mother's voice clearly through the speaker. There was no panic in her tone, no sob, no motherly terror. "Tonight," my mother replied, her voice flat and annoyed. "We can't come tonight. We're busy. Chloe had a major emergency. Her birthday trip was cancelled, and she's completely hysterical right now. Your sister needs us more right now. Clara can wait until morning." "Ma'am, you don't understand," the nurse pleaded, her voice shaking with disbelief. "She might not survive until morning." "We'll come when we can," my mother said coldly and hung up the phone. The nurse stood frozen, staring at the receiver before looking over at me. She didn't know I was awake, watching her eyes fill with tears of pity for the girl lying in the bed. As the quiet hum of the ICU filled the dark room, the physical pain in my body faded, replaced by an icy, absolute clarity. Dying didn't kill my love for my family. Their rejection did. Laying there in the dark, fighting for every breath alone, I made a silent promise to myself. If I survived this night, the girl who let them walk all over her was going to stay dead. I survived the night. By the third day, the tubes were removed, and the doctors shifted me from critical care to a private room. My body was battered and bruised, but my mind had never been sharper. While I lay recovering, my phone vibrated constantly on the bedside table. Not a single text was from my mother asking if I was alive, or if the surgery had gone well. Instead, the screen lit up with frantic demands from her and Chloe. "Clara, the rent on Chloe's apartment is due today. And why isn't your card working? We're trying to book Chloe's replacement flight." They didn't care that I was fighting for my life. They only cared that their golden faucet had suddenly stopped running. A cold, deliberate rage settled deep within me. I reached for the phone and dialed my longtime attorney, Arthur. Sitting upright in my hospital bed, I instructed him to initiate a complete financial execution. First, I revoked my mother's power of attorney over my affairs. Next, I removed Chloe as an authorized user on every single one of my credit accounts, freezing the cards instantly. I instructed Arthur to sell my share of the family-connected consulting business we had started years ago, the very company that funded my mother's monthly allowance. Every dime I owned was transferred into new, private accounts that only I could touch. I was systematically dismantling the bridge between us, plank by plank. On the morning of my 6th day, the doctor cleared me for early discharge to a private rehabilitation facility across state lines. Before the orderly rolled my wheelchair out of the room, I pulled a crisp piece of white paper from my bag. With a steady hand, I wrote a short, definitive message, placed it inside an envelope, and set it squarely in the middle of the empty hospital bed. I looked back at the room one last time. I was leaving behind the invisible, dutiful daughter they had exploited for decades. They wanted an emergency. I was about to give them one they could never recover from. On the 7th day after my accident, the heavy wooden doors of the hospital unit swung open. My mother, father, and Chloe strolled down the hallway, looking more like shoppers at a mall than a family visiting a recovering victim. They hadn't come out of concern or love. They had come because every credit card had been declined, and Chloe's landlord was threatening eviction. "She's probably just playing dramatic to get attention," my mother grumbled to Chloe as they approached my room. "When we get in there, don't let her guilt trip us. Just get her to sign the bank authorization forms so we can sort out your rent." Chloe nodded, scrolling through her phone. "She owes me anyway. Her little accident completely ruined my birthday week." They pushed open the door to room 412, ready to shower me with rehearsed pity and demands. But as they stepped inside, the room was dead silent. The heart monitors were dark. The 4 stands were empty. The bed was neatly made, stripped of all medical equipment. Standing in the center of the spotless white mattress was a single white envelope with my mother's name written across the front in sharp, dark ink. "Where is she?" Chloe asked, looking around the empty room in confusion. "Did they move her?" My mother approached the bed, her brows furrowed in annoyance as she snatched the envelope off the mattress. She tore it open and pulled out the folded note inside. As her eyes scanned the lines, the color slowly drained from her face. Her hand began to tremble, and the confident, cold posture she had held her entire life collapsed in an instant. The note read, "To my family. I heard the phone call in the ICU. I heard you tell the nurse that you were too busy to come while I was dying. I spent 32 years believing I had to buy your love. Now I realize you never had any to give. As you read this, every account linked to your names has been closed. Chloe's cards are cancelled. The allowance is gone. My business shares have been sold. You will never see another dime of my money, nor will you ever see me again. Have a wonderful life paying for it yourselves." Before my mother could scream, the head nurse walked into the room. "Can I help you?" she asked coldly. "Where is my daughter?" my mother gasped, clutching the note to her chest. "Clara was discharged 2 days ago," the nurse replied with a satisfied smile. "And she left explicit instructions. None of you are ever to be given her medical records, address, or location again. Have a nice day. The financial fallout hit my family faster than they ever expected. Without my monthly income funding their lifestyle, Chloe's world collapsed like a house of cards. Her luxury car was repossessed within a month, and her landlord evicted her after 3 unpaid notices. With no savings and zero work ethic, she was forced to move back into my parents' cramped house. To cover Chloe's accumulated debts and back taxes, my parents had to take out a massive second mortgage on their home in their late 50s. The golden child they had spent 2 decades spoiling became their greatest burden, constant evidence of the monster they had created. Meanwhile, I moved to a quiet coastal town 3 states away. I bought a sunlit house surrounded by pine trees, far away from the noise and toxic demands of my past. For the first time in 32 years, my money was mine, my peace was mine, and my life was mine to build. I started a small consultancy, made true friends who loved me for who I was, and finally learned what it meant to sleep through the night without fear or obligation. Sometimes late at night I see missed calls from unknown numbers on my phone. I never answer them. They didn't come when I was dying. They don't get to reach me while I am living. If your own family abandoned you in your darkest, most vulnerable moment, would you ever find it in your heart to forgive them, or would you walk away forever like I did? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.